there are fewer errors with medical apps, right?
Right. And my health experience is now on my time as opposed to the doctor's time, which I think is huge.
A lot of people are ending up kind of just a little bit afraid to go to a hospital.
You go into like an ER or a hospital and you're like, I'm here with all the sick people.
Yeah.
All right, Cody, today we get to talk about apps in general. So we obviously build tons of applications, but I want to focus on the medical kind of vertical.
Yeah.
Healthcare applications. Everyone can benefit obviously from an app, but I think medical has had a lot of benefits. So we're going to talk about basically the 5 benefits of using medical apps. Number 1 for me is just the healthcare experience being remote healthcare. I used to have to book an appointment on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and work around some schedule to go do a physical, or even like if I'm sick and need help with something, I had to actually see a doctor or a nurse in office at a particular day and time. Whereas now I can do a telehealth type of experience, and I can like be on a camera and kind of talking back and forth. And my health experience is now on my time as opposed to the doctor's time, which I think is huge.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't disagree. I mean, ultimately, we still have to schedule things.
We still have to schedule things,
we have to be somewhere at 3, like in front of an iPad, but that's still super convenient, especially post-COVID too. I think that's a big benefit, is that a lot of people, depending on how you look at the whole thing, a lot of people are ending up kind of just a little bit afraid to go to a hospital.
Sure.
No one really wants to be in that waiting room with like the 3 dudes who are coughing and look like they're about to die. So
we all were thinking about it, you know, for years and years and years. You'd always go into like an ER or a hospital and you're like, I'm here with all the sick people.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like the world kind of shifted, I think, in the last few years, and we had COVID and people are starting to become more aware of like, maybe when I'm sick and slightly compromised, I don't want to be around other sick people.
Exactly.
And so is there a way I can remotely get my health care? Yeah, I think it's really great and it's going to stick around.
I agree. I totally agree. Moving on though, there's also number 2, there are fewer errors with medical apps, right?
Right, sure.
Yeah, so the idea that, especially if you don't have like a centralized hospital you go to, right? And you go from clinic to clinic, like you go to see your primary care and then he prescribes you, oh, hey, we need an x-ray, go over here. Oh, hey, your prescription's ready over here. The idea that communication no longer has to be just a phone call or a handwritten note.
Right.
And not to make fun of doctors, but I don't know if you've ever seen a handwritten prescription note. It's a meme of itself. And I think having that data be digitally transcribed and transmitted leads to better outcomes for patients ultimately, because it's a sad fact if you ever look at the statistics of what actual practice error can result in, but it's bad and you don't want it to happen to you. And I think having that stuff digitally recorded, audited, and tracked, and not relying on handwritten notes or vocal communication, that is just a better outcome for anyone. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, I came from the era of, literally having a vaccine card that was handwritten out, and you would like go get a booster shot somewhere, and then if you went to the other clinic, you'd like grab and be like, here, these are the things I've had, and they're like, okay, cool. And now, again, in the last few years, it's like, it's really important because you might have to go get a COVID test somewhere at some clinic, and then your main, practitioner actually gives you the initial shot, and then you go get a booster at some other clinic, all based, again, off of healthcare now being owned in my space. I want to know that that's digitally been tracked along the way within an app, and I'm not getting double boosted or under boosted or whatever it is, or like just vaccine records in general being digitized has changed so much, and hopefully less errors that way.
Yeah, honestly, to touch on that before we go into another subject, I've had a lot of personal experience with that too, with getting different vaccinations that we all have, and I think I went to my primary care practitioner and got a few of my little boosties, as they say, and then I went to a different one and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to go talk to my hospital about this. And then I got it done, and then the next day I was on my record, or I was like, how'd they do that?
How'd they do that?
It's magic.
Yeah. So what's cool about that is, and I think this takes us to point number 3, is you're owning your healthcare, you have fewer errors, and now with wearable technology, number 3, wearable technology, we can actually have an application to integrate now.
Yeah.
We're all wearing smartwatches. Diabetics, for years now, they wear insulin pumps that have the ability to actually transmit information to an application. All kinds of smart technology allows not only you as the actual wearer to be able to benefit from the information and feedback that you're getting, but now that's also going to your doctor. It's going to the healthcare providers, and they're able to track sleep patterns, and they're able to track glucose levels. And there's so much wearable technology now that has existed for a long, long time, but to be able to actually tie it into an app, I think is extremely crucial.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree at all. I know, especially you mentioned everyone's wearing smartwatches, and I was like, yeah, but no, you're not wrong. A lot of people.
Boss? He needs to pay you more.
I have an Apple Watch; it's just never on me.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so yeah, the amount of technology that we can use to actually just over time get records from ourselves, the biometrics that have not historically ever been available. A doctor only sees what they can witness. Now they can see your whole, like you say, oh, I've had this symptom since this period. They can look back and see, is there any difference in those vitals, and understanding that information, I think, is massively powerful for any type of diagnosis for anyone. And that, again, much like the last thing that we were talking about, leads to better outcomes, right?
Agreed. Even, that age-old question, you go into the doctor's office, they're like, so are you staying active? How often do you exercise? And unless you're one of those people where you're like, I go to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays from blah, 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 you're like, yes, I'm staying active. Whereas now I can literally be like, oh yeah, here's all my data. It says I went on these walks on these days of the week, and I played soccer on Saturday, and I ran X amount of miles. I can say, this is how active I am, doctor. And they can much more, uniquely tailored to you say, that's great, or say, you need a little more activity. Wow, you're old, you're working out too much, slow down, you're gonna break your heart, That's never happened to me. They're like, you need to exercise. You need to exercise,
yeah. Yeah, I wonder the day when those will get so advanced, you just get a text message from your doctor at like 11:30 at night on a Friday.
You're dying.
Just like, hey, stop eating chips and drinking beer. It's just an update. So, that's great. And I think kind of stemming off of the wearable technology, obviously part of that is number 4, greater speed of communication.
Yeah.
The main thing is that we talked about fewer errors, wearable technology, and remote applications. All of this really ties in to being able to have the healthcare system work faster and more responsive and more reactive to what is going on right now, instead of waiting for a bureaucracy trail, which still exists on the insurance side. But in terms of actual medical practice, things are getting a lot quicker because now we have technology that will allow information from one provider to the next provider instantaneously. And then at that point, it's just how quickly can they look at it? It doesn't have that middleman. So I think that generally is going to, again, improve patient outcomes a lot, with that speed of communication just being added straight to the whole kind of stack of improvements thanks to technology inside of the medical space.
Yeah, and I've seen it even happen. My kids recently had a change in school, and we had to swap from one school to another school very quickly, like literally over a weekend. And there was different, vaccination needs, different medical record information that wasn't provided to the new school. And so we both were able to just get that information over digitally extremely quick, but also go get some shots and boosters and things that needed to happen. It all was on their record and was all over to the new school. Literally in the course of like hours. We didn't even need the full weekend, and it was done, and they were able to be at one school on Friday and a completely different school on Monday. And that was due to this fast data transfer, which is just wild.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But with all this data, I think the ultimate use of data is the gold that it is, and how do you mine that, and what do you do with it, and how do you basically use, I think, AI and algorithms and technology to basically provide information. So AI and just now having all this data that we're collected, I think it's so helpful for healthcare providers to be able to actually look at trends and patterns based off of this data and use artificial intelligence and machine learning to actually be able to help provide you a better level of healthcare than you probably were getting before. If you, again, are wearing wearables and it's pushing this data and it's actually being checked on the regular, that's very different than I go to the doctor every 10 years for a physical exam and I cancel twice.
Don't at me.
don't come at me, bro. I think artificial intelligence as a whole is just changing healthcare.
No, I agree. I think kind of an unfortunate side effect of having so much AI in the healthcare industry is that in a lot of ways, the cart came before the horse. We had AI and neural processing, neural network AI and whatnot available long before we had the quality of metrics that would be necessary to make any reasonable deduction from such an advanced AI. And I think now finally that horse is being built with the advent of more wearable technology. And I think there's still a lot of improvements to be made there. Like, if I have a rash on my arm, right, how does the wearable know about that, right? Like there's certain qualitative metrics that just there's no solution for. I'm not even sure if there would be a solution for. But I do think that there's a lot of benefits to just standard systemic vitals and being able to plug that into an AI saying, hey, so I noticed you have some sort of a heart arrhythmia that is consistent with XYZ conditions. And the AI sends it to your doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, man, that's bad. He needs to get in here now.
Yeah, or even just the rash and being able to, analyze a bunch of pictures of rashes and be like, that doesn't look like a good one. We're not certain what it is, but why don't you go talk to a human that can discern what this rash is, is helpful. It's like you just couldn't do that before. So it's just wild how taking that healthcare experience, bringing it remote, everything now is having less errors. We got the wearable tech. We're tracking all this data. It's so fast. AI, it is just changing healthcare as a whole.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chris and Cody as they talked all about medical apps and the improved benefits that we're seeing for patient outcomes. It's just amazing to see. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comments and we'll get right back to you. And don't forget to check out the description box down below. We have a bunch of really helpful links for you. And in particular, I want to highlight our free DevOps guide. It has a bunch of great information if you're interested in a DevOps implementation. And of course, check us out online, bixley.com. It's a great place to learn about all of the different services that we have, including a free 60-minute call with Chris. All you have to do is hit that button right at the top that says Start My Project Roadmap. Until next time, this has been an episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday.